Right, I think we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much for joining us for an exciting video. And I just noticed on the stream, even though I'd got this all set up beforehand, everybody's disappeared. But everybody's back now. There we go. Welcome to a tutorial and playthrough of Terminus. This is the latest game that's coming from Inside Up Games, who've kindly sponsored this video. We're going to be playing through it today. And it goes live on Kickstarter minus 2 minutes ago, I believe. Is that right? It's just gone live.
I think it just started.
Yeah, excellent. So it is live on Kickstarter. If you are interested in what you see here, then certainly have a look in the description of this video. There is a link to the Kickstarter there. Couple of things before we start. First of all, a big thank you to Earl and Tom, who are the designers of this game, who's joined me today and is going to be teaching me. How are you doing?
Hello.
Pretty good. Excited.
Now, this is your first... I'm going to say it's your first game that you've designed. It's probably not the first game that you've designed, but this is the first game you've designed that's been picked up by a publisher and is actually going to be turned into reality.
Yes, I'm gonna say yes for my count. I know I've made a board game when I was in high school, but that didn't get far.
Yeah,
it's definitely the first one that Earl and I have worked on together.
Right.
We'll say that.
Yeah. And the Kickstarter just went live. So yeah, pretty exciting times for you two. We're going to be playing today over Tabletop Simulator. The logistics of me being in the UK, it just wasn't possible for me to have a physical copy of the game and be with you two while you're teaching me. So we are using Tabletop Simulator today. This is an official mod for the game. And my question first, sometimes I play mods on Tabletop Simulator which are using an older version of the game graphically. What we're looking at here, is this what the final version looks like?
It's probably like 90% the way there, I think. There might be a few small tweaks that they'll make, but I think for the most part it's really, really close visually. Okay,
so even though this is on Tabletop Simulator, what people see here is going to look similar to what the actual final version is. Excellent. Yeah. So, as well as Tom and Earl, TK is joining us today. Good afternoon, or good morning for you. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Now, I did put out a post to my Patreon supporters because Tom and Earl said, we really want a 3-player game. And Tom's going to be doing the teach today. Earl's going to be one of the players. And you jumped at the chance because you've actually played this game before, quite a while ago, I think.
I have. It was about 1.5 or 2 years ago. Yep.
Right. Well, hopefully the game hasn't changed too much and you can remember some of what you did.
Right.
But the way that it's going to work today is, rather than a full lengthy explanation of all of the rules of the game up front, Tom's going to give us an overview of the game because I don't actually know it. I'm going into this mostly cold. All I know is it's 2 to 5 players, it's competitive, and we're building subways. And I think that's about everything I know about the game. So yeah, Tom's going to give us an overview of how it works. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to start playing, and we'll be explaining the rules to you as we go along, because they'll be explaining them to me as they go along. If you've got any questions or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat. I probably won't be able to answer them. But also, the audio levels between me and the guests, let me know how that is. If I'm too loud or they're too loud, let me know and I can adjust that. Other than that, I will hand over to Tom, who's going to tell us what this game's about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, this is Terminus. As you kind of mentioned, Terminus is a subway building game. The players, we are all sort of different transit companies, and we are competing to build the most prestigious line in the city. And when I say prestigious, that's just kind of our word for victory points.
Yep.
So whenever you see this kind of green outlined shape kind of on these cards here, it's going to come up on the cards that are in this deck here. On the top right of your player boards, there's a few there as well. So it comes up in a few different places. There's a big score pad in the top left here. Or at least top left in my angle, my camera angle, that kind of tells you a bit of the different points there. So when I say that prestige, that's just our word for victory points. Yeah. And we're basically trying to compete to build the line that gives us the most victory points. And all those points will be totaled at the end of the game, so there won't be any scoring until the game is over.
Oh, right. Okay.
We'll go through all that.
Yeah.
The game's going to be played over 3 rounds or years. as we call them in Terminus. In this sort of fantasy world, it only takes 3 years to build a fully fledged transit system, which I don't know how accurate that is, but that's the way we're doing it. So it's going to be 3 years or rounds. In each year, we're going to kind of do a few different little phases, little things. The first phase of each year will be kind of our yearly budget or income, where we'll get a different amounts of things like coins that are in these bowls here, these resource cubes, which I'll explain a little bit what those do later in the game, and then some of these rail pieces that are off the sides of our boards for each player color. So we'll get some allotment of those things at the start of every single one of these 3 years. That'll be the first thing that happens. And then the main part of each year is going to be us taking actions around this rondelle or this action loop that's here at the very top of the main board. So this is an action loop which houses a number of different possible actions that you can take. I won't get into the weeds of what all these do and everything like that, but suffice to say you are sort of moving around this action loop clockwise, taking various actions, and sort of trying to eventually build out your subway line throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
And as we play, we'll kind of learn more about those actions and kind of what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the game. We'll go through that sort of 3 years in a row. And once all 3 years are concluded, we'll jump to scoring, and then hopefully one person has more prestige than everyone else.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
So we can jump directly really into setup. So in setup, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sort of choosing a bit of a starting objective that's going to give us something to like do in terms of, what kind of subway line can I build? Where can I build on the city? Things like that. It's going to give us a bit of our sort of starting yearly budget, kind of things like that, the coins, the resource cubes, things like that. And as well, it's going to tell us where our actual subway line will start in the city itself. So we'll kind of be deciding those things in the setup. So you'll notice for each player, you have a couple of cards that are already in your hands in Tabletop Simulator. They're the face down cards.
Yes.
Or maybe they're face up on your ends. I can't see them. So these are private agendas that are going to tell you a certain way to build in the city. So it might say something to the effect of build in a certain one of these colored districts, of which there are 7 in the city that comprise the whole city. So it might say something like build in, McClellan Heights and Chippers Row or something like that. Mm-hmm. It might say some other things that aren't exactly aligned to these named districts. Don't worry too much about what exactly they say. Suffice to say they are just kind of different ways to build to score points at the end of the game. So what you can do is you can choose one of those 2. And keep that one face down. I guess you can kind of keep it in your hand if you want. You can put it also face down next to your board if you'd like as well. And then the other agenda that you were not keeping, as Earl's showing here, you can kind of just put face down on the actual city board, kind of in front of your own player board, just so you know it's kind of the one in front of you. And
so that's the one that I'm not choosing.
Sounds correct. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the one you're not choosing.
And the one that I am choosing is kept in my hand, and that's like my secret objective. If I've done that at the end of the game, I'm going to score some points.
Score some points, yeah. So now that we have all these 3 discarded, what we would normally do with these 3 cards is you'll notice now that I flipped them, there's a, I guess you flipped yours. There's a number in the top right corner. So that's going to actually determine our turn order for the first year. Now, because this is an initial test and Earl's here in the game, we're going to cheat a little bit. We're going to make sure Earl goes first. So I'll actually just put Earl first. But normally that number will help determine who goes first, second, and third. So that's another reason to decide one over the other in terms of those 2 cards that you kind of start out looking at. So Earl, I'll let you put those. I'll put these cards away.
And then I think purple will be next. As what was originally 10, and then red. Okay, got it.
Okay. That flipped. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So we have that order there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is actually in the reverse of this order. So starting with red and then purple and then orange, we're going to take, if you look at the nice big row of discs on your player boards, the very leftmost disc is kind of one that's a bit larger than all the rest. It's a
Yep.
kind of a double stacked one. That's called our prime hub. Now, don't worry about what that term means. That'll be explained a bit later. But that's essentially going to be the starting point of your own subway line. So what we're going to do is for free, starting with red, you're going to take that prime hub, that big one, and you're going to put it somewhere in the city on one of these circular spots. Now, you may want to choose a spot based on maybe the objective that you had selected, if that matters. But otherwise, you're free to kind of put it, more or less wherever else you want. Usually the middle of the board is a little bit better than like at the very edge, but you can feel free to do whatever you want. There's no kind of wrong spot. Awesome. And
Okay.
then, Paul, you can also do the same. Grab that big one and
Yeah, I
pop
think
it
I'm
down
going to go
anywhere you
here.
want, right beside him, okay?
Yeah, that might
And
not be a
Earl,
good thing to do, but
it'll be interesting, that's for sure. And Earl's going to be safe on his own side over there. Cool. So that's kind of noted where we are all starting our line. So whenever we do get to the act of actually building out more of our transit system, more of our subway line, we'll be building out from these initial sort of stops that we've placed down, and that'll come later into the game. Now you'll notice that when we place those prime hubs onto the city, it revealed a bit of a icon that has a coin symbol and then a number beside it, or number above it there. So that's going to determine what our starting years, the first year's budget is in terms of our coins. Now, we already set that up ahead of time, so there's already 12 coins.
because it's
on
always
each player
12 for the first one. Yep.
It's going to always be 12, but that's going to kind of give you an indication of the money. And you'll notice that, just for example, on purple's board, if I move a few of your stops away, you'll notice that the money goes up and up. So the
Yep.
more you build, the more money you get in subsequent years in the game.
Yeah.
So that's determining your money, which we're starting with already. And then the last kind of thing that we're going to be doing is you'll notice on the top left of your player boards, there's an option to choose another element of your starting year's budget. Now, I strongly recommend you just keep it on the very left one, because that's going to give us some resource cubes that will help us take some of the early actions around the loop, so you can get a feel for what kind of it feels like to take some of those actions. But throughout the game in subsequent years, you can feel free to like move these around to different ones at the start of each of those years if you want to grab a different assortment of resource cubes and or rail pieces. So you might have a different strategy in mind, and that will determine what you're going to take in leater years.
But you're saying for the first year, recommended to keep it on the leftmost one.
Yeah, that's just because it's your first time playing. I think you're going to want whatever that's giving you, and it'll help you just to take some of the early things in the loop, just so you have a feel for what's going on.
Right. Okay.
Cool. So now we've actually selected that, we can take what that gives us. So this is saying 2, and then there's a picture of a little brown folder.
Yep.
So that's going to align with this brown resource, which is called permit. So permit is one of our 4 resources. So because we've all selected probably that same one, we can all choose from the leftmost side of these sort of columns of cubes. You can take 2 of them and put them on your player board in the little 2x4 grid of cube icons that's on your player board there.
Okay. And we get these for free, do we?
Yeah, so you're going to get these for free. This is going to be part of your sort of starting budget here.
Okay. But normally you would have to pay for these if you choose the buy permit action, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. So later in the game, once we're taking actions, you'll be actually paying to acquire these.
Okay. So where are these permits going to go?
They're going to go right here on this little 2x4 grid.
I didn't want to assume, but I thought they would from the little images on there. Okay, so I have 2 permits,
and then
we've also got one something else.
So that's going to be one of these rails of your color. So you can take one of these rails and put them. There's a little slot here next to the meeples. So you can put that on, and again, you'll have other ways of getting these rails and putting them on your board throughout the game. This just gives you one to start out with. At the start of this current year.
Got it.
So we've placed our Prime Hub, we've selected our private agenda objective, we've gotten our starting budget, so everything's all good, and we can start the game. So we can start with Earl because he's first. Earl, I'll let you kind of move your marker, and then as you do it, I'll kind of
Sure.
explain what you're doing.
Sure. I'm just gonna go right to the first action here,
So,
and
yeah. So what Earl's going to probably do is he's almost certainly, unless he's going to do something really weird and mess me up, is he's probably going to take this action here, which if you hover over it, that's called the take a development action.
Yeah.
So what this means is when I am doing this action, there's kind of these tiles up at the top of the board here. These are sort of like representing, airports and shopping malls and other kinds of like developments in the city. And what Earl's going to be doing is actually paying a resource, which I'll explain a little bit later, to actually take one of these tiles and drop them down into the city so that he gains a later benefit throughout the game.
Right.
So you'll notice that on the action next to it, there's
That's
a
what
darker
this is.
little thing. That is again the permit icon, but it's a -1 this time.
Yep.
So that indicates that Earl's paying 1 permit, which is the brown resource. He'll pay that back to the rightmost column, so filling up the most expensive spaces first, and then that allows him to then take that actual action because he spent that money. So he's going to take one of these tiles. Now the only stipulations on these tiles is he has to place it next to one of his stops. Now right now he only has one, but later on when he has a much larger line, he might have more options for where to place. And then the next rule is he's got to place it so that the top of this color, so this is a red development tile, he's got to place it so it's touching any of the red backing area that's next to his line. So for example, Earl's going to drop his tile down. Let's see where he puts it.
So the only legal spaces are here or here.
Exactly, because these two spaces, while they're beside his prime
not
hub,
red.
they are not red.
Yeah.
And that also means that Earl could have taken any of the other colors because he could have fit a green one here, for example, or a blue in any of those spaces. So he had all the options, but he chose the red one.
Right.
So what this tile is doing, so I'm going to give you a brief overview of this action loop now. So Earl's gone to this spot. What he's done is he's gone here, he's taken an action in this area, and then he's kind of executed the action and his turn's about to be over. Now, how he decided to do that is you'll notice that this action loop is divided into a few different colors. So he went to this first area of colors, this sort of lighter kind of teal area. You'll notice that that's not only color coded, but there's an icon here. So any of these sort of rectangles that align to this color are going to be doable in this space on the action loop. So for some reason, if Earl wanted to do an action, over here, he's going to have to instead be in this space way over here.
Yeah.
While he's not there, he can't do those actions. So now because he's here, he was able to do this action. Now he can only do one and only one of the actions available to him in this space. So he can't be like, oh, I want to do this and this and this or whatever. He's only choosing one of the actions, which means, these other actions he doesn't get. He might have to figure out a way to do them later, or maybe not do them at all, or whatever. So he's executed that action in full. His turn's going to end, but when it does come back to him, he's going to pick up his action marker and move it clockwise around the loop, stopping at either the next space if he wants, or he can skip spaces and move somewhere else, and then take another action somewhere else. Around the loop. And again, he's going to do the exact same thing. He's going to stop there, take one of the actions, execute it in full, paying whatever he needs to, finishing the action, his turn ends. Everyone else does the same thing in various spaces, and so on and so forth.
So that was going to be a question that I asked, is that obviously Earl has chosen this space, which is the first action, but he could have actually started here.
Exactly.
He could have skipped that and gone to
there. He could have gone here. Now, typically, you're probably going to want to take this develop action as your first action, just because it gives you one of these nice tiles.
Right.
And the reason that's important is you'll notice that on this tile that Earl placed down, there's this kind of picture, this icon at the top. And you'll notice that on the action loop, that icon also appears here. So what this tile has given Earl is a net new action in this zone of the action loop. So when Earl eventually comes to this green area of the action loop, instead of choosing either this action or this action, he now has the option of instead choosing
to do this action. Right.
Tile.
Okay.
Now, only he has the ability to do that because he's put one of his meeples, or as you notice if you hover over, they're called lobbyists.
Okay.
He's
So
put
that's
one of
his
his
tile.
lobbyists. That's a tile that he has access to. There is another lobbyist spot next to his. So if at some point in the game, someone else, one of you, got one of your lobbyists onto this tile, you would also get the option
Right.
to use this action as well.
Okay.
You'd only be able to do that if you could get a lobbyist on there, which I'll explain that a little bit later.
Hmm.
But for Earl right now, he's the only one with the option to do that. And you'll notice that
Right.
all the development tiles have different icons at the top, which correspond to the different zones
Okay.
of the loop. So there's a
Now,
few
quick
different-
question about these 12 developments. Are
Yeah.
they the 12 developments for the game, or were they randomly chosen from a set, or how does that work?
They weren't randomly chosen, but
Okay.
it's just chosen for a specific like first time setup. But there are a number of other tiles that were not in this particular play that we're doing.
Right. I've got one more question about this action loop.
Absolutely.
When we have been round the action loop, is that us over for the year,
Great
or do we
question.
keep going
So-
round it? Because I'm
you'll
looking at the
notice that-
icons on the left-hand
yeah,
side,
there's
and
a lot of cool stuff
yeah.
over here. So you'll notice that there's some symbols like time symbols, things like that. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is to represent sort of, because these are years and not rounds, to represent time running out on us in each year. As we get to the end of the loop, you'll notice that there's this time stuff here. So Earl is going to, as he moves across this space, he's going to move this secondary smaller cycle marker down one space.
Right.
And as he does that, that denotes that he has one less cycle to play with inside of the year to move around the action loop. So if you notice that there's 3 total spots here, Earl can only move around this action loop 3 times in each year.
Right.
So once he gets down to the very end like this, and he gets here, he can no longer move this down because there's no space, which means that for Earl, he's instead going to pass and end the year for himself personally. He'll wait for everyone else to eventually do the same. Once that's done, the year will end for everyone. Then we'll move on to the next year and we'll do the whole thing all over again.
Is there any disadvantage then to literally doing every single action one at a time and spending... I'm thinking Maracaibo, because in Maracaibo you've got all of the boats moving along, but whenever somebody gets to the end, the round ends for everybody. You're saying that's not the case here. If somebody ends it early, we still get to do our full 3 cycles round?
Exactly. So I mean,
Right.
generally all players will be within like a few turns of each other unless someone really moved really fast or something like that. But you probably want to take as many turns as you can, because as soon as you get to the end of that year, that's one less year left to do anything, right? So, however, if you notice that most of these actions do cost something, any of these minus costs here are always going to be something you're paying. So you probably don't have the capability to
do everything.
do every single
Right.
action.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay.
And then there might also be a reason for you to jump really far ahead. Maybe, for example, maybe these green cubes, these power cubes that they're called, maybe they became really cheap and you think, oh, I really need to buy these. So I'll jump ahead really far to get those really cheaper before someone else does, or something like that.
Okay.
So there might be reasons for you to jump ahead versus stay behind. But you'll have to think about in the moment if that's right or wrong. And there'll be, pros and cons of doing either throughout the game as you're playing.
Okay. So that's Earl's turn done.
Mhm.
It's me next.
That's
now
my turn.
you're suggesting that everybody should do this as their first action in the game?
Yeah, I think especially for your first time playing, you probably
Okay.
don't want to not have a tile down, because it's going to give you some nice little extra action bonus
Right.
that you can sort of
So I'm going to spend one of my permits that is returned
that's
to
that.
here.
since
Now,
you're purple,
I've not had a look at these yet, so yeah.
So I mean, as purple, you do have the option of dropping any color tile, because you do have a little blue corner
Blue,
here,
green.
and a green corner. So you definitely can place any kind of color tile down you want. I might recommend something along the lines, perhaps, of this one down here in the bottom left. What that one's going to do when we place it on the board, is it's going to, whenever you spend the, whenever you come to
Can do that
one of these actions here,
Yeah.
and take either this action or this action, which, as you can maybe guess, allows you to buy either of those resources.
Yeah.
At the end of taking that turn, that action, you get one extra one of those resources
Okay.
for free.
Yeah. Nice and simple.
So
Right.
kind of like a little extra boon there.
Okay.
Yeah, and you've already put your lobbyist down. So again, that denotes that
Confirm
you
it.
have access to do it.
Did that. Yeah.
And yeah, that's your turn. And then
Okay.
TK.
TK next.
Alrighty. I will join the crowd.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then also happy to take recommendations.
Yeah.
For sure.
Tom?
So you again also have the full breadth of options.
Right.
Perhaps something along the lines of this one might be nice. This will give you a way to get your rail pieces in a bit of a cheaper way versus everyone else. So that might be a nice one. So
that
yeah, if
sounds
you
great.
want to grab that one, you can spend one of your permits and then kind of drop that somewhere onto the board.
Okay.
And then at the end of that action, you can also put one of your lobbyist meeples onto one of the two little spaces. That denotes that you have the ability to do that.
Okay. And it doesn't matter where they come from, right? Any of the lobbyists.
So the lobbyists, for the purposes of this action, will be specifically coming from your player board. So that's going to be just one extra rule there to keep in mind with the take a development action is it does need to come the lobbyist from the supply that you have on your player board. So if for some reason you have like 0 lobbyists on your player board, you wouldn't be able to fully complete that action. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So everyone's taken their first action. So Earl, you can continue on ahead. Let's see what Earl.
So where's he going to go?
Oh, all right. I'm going to go not here. I'm
Okay.
actually going to skip a space here.
Whoa.
All right, Earl, what are you going to do?
Oh boy.
So just so I understand this, you've got a choice of this action or this action.
Correct.
Or if you had a lobbyist on a building with this icon, you could do the action of that building.
Exactly.
Right. Got it.
Okay. I think let's see if this works for me. I will spend 2 coins. And Tom, if you want to explain, I'm buying an upgrade.
So Earl is going to perform the action at the top here, which is buy an upgrade. So that's the gear symbol with a -X there and then a -X coins. So what these are allowing him to do, so you'll notice that there's 6 of these kind of gray other tiles up here at the top. So unlike the developments, which are actions that are specific to a zone of the action loop itself, these upgrade tiles are a little bit more universally beneficial, and they will help you throughout the game while you're taking like a multitude of different kinds of actions. So they're a little bit just more like generally beneficial, and they will kind of encompass a lot of different elements of the game as you're playing. So Earl's decided he wants to acquire one of these, and to do so, if you notice on the sort of below your row of stations to the right, there's a couple of spots with the gear icon. So one has a -2 coin, and then the one beside it has a -2 coin and a -1 blueprint, which is the blue resource. So you can have space for up to 2 of these upgrades. The first one that Earl's buying will cost him 2. The next one that he buys, if he eventually chooses to buy a second one at some point in the game, will cost him 2 coins and also one of the blueprint resources.
Okay.
So he has chosen a
wild
tile.
Resource.
So the tile that he's chosen is Wild Resource, which essentially means that whenever so eventually during the game, you're going to be not only acquiring these cubes, but as we've already done, spending those cubes, right? So we've already spent some of our permits. So when Earl spends any of the resource cubes that are listed on the left, which are the permit, blueprint, or power resource cubes, he can use one of those cubes during that purchase, can act as one of these other 4 something else.
Right, got it.
And you'll notice that there is a 4th resource listed on the right. That's the orange construction resource here. So he can use one of those 3 as also like the construction if he wanted to.
Yeah.
So that is Earl's turn.
Yep.
Now Earl did skip this section.
He did.
So he's made things a little bit more difficult because now you guys have to make a bit of a choice. So the action area that he skipped here, the zone, this is kind of going to be, again, you notice that you're paying a lot of permits here. There's permits being paid to do things. What this area is kind of governing is sort of strategizing and planning our objectives to like eventually score points at the end of the game. So you're going to be able to do things like get more of those private objective cards that will score you points at the end of the game. You can see that there's these face-up cards. These are called projects. So these projects are, again, public, but you'll notice there's lobby spots on them as well. So what this kind of means is when you eventually put lobbyists on here through the action that you take in this zone, you start to like fill up those spaces, which means that only a couple of different players in the game can be on these cards at the end of the game to score the
Right.
hypothetical points.
Okay,
And
well,
these again are Sorry, go ahead.
let's do that just for this purpose of this demonstration. Let's pretend I actually know what I'm doing, and I'm going there, and I'm going to say, right, I've got this end game objective sorted, so I'm going to go there to claim it. So my 2 actions, both of them will cost a permit, whichever one I do.
Yep. So you can spend a permit
So
now.
let's spend
Because
fire
it's
in
your
there.
first year and the first cycle of the first year, you probably would rather do this action versus going on here, only
Okay.
because you've noticed already that you've been using lobbyists to like go onto these tiles.
Yes.
And you notice that lobbyists are being used here. So if you put lobbyists on these cards, they are permanently sort of stuck in
Right.
these cards for the end until the end of the game. So you may not want to like commit to those early versus taking this action
Sure.
doesn't force you to use those lobbyists yet, and it gives you a nice extra, private objective that you can
Right.
sort of have with you.
So what's this telling me here?
So what this is telling you is for each year, we're going to draw a different amount of cards from this deck
Yep.
and then keep one of them total. So
Right.
the first year, you're going to draw 3. So we're in the first year, so you can draw 3 of those.
There you go.
You're only going to keep one of them.
Right.
So you keep the one that hopefully, is maybe you think is easiest to do. Maybe it aligns with the other objective you already have.
Yep.
Or maybe it aligns with wherever your Prime Hub already is, things like that. Some of these objectives may ask you to build next to developments, so you might see some of those. And now we know that developments are these tiles that are already in the game, so you kind of have an idea of what that might mean.
Yeah. Can I just ask a terminology question? Because I know what a hub
Sure.
is. What's a stop?
So a stop is going to be any disk or kind of disk that you have on the city at all. So these prime hubs also count as stops.
Right.
You mentioned the word hubs, which
Yeah.
I guess I just said as well. So a normal hub, eventually, once we sort of build, we're going to build, a single disk onto a circle like that. Later in the game, you'll be able to actually drop a second disk if you want onto this first disk, which
Okay.
forms what's called a hub.
Right.
So if it asks you to build hubs, that's kind of what it's
So
it's
one
referring
disk
to.
one disk is a stop. 2 disks is a hub, but a hub is also a stop.
So one disk actually, to maybe further complicate
Sorry,
it, one
yeah.
disk is actually called a station, which doesn't come
Station.
up very often, but
Right.
just for the distinction of if it ever asks for that, a station is specifically just the one stack disk itself.
Right. Okay. I'm
But
going
most
to
things
keep
do- yeah,
a
go ahead.
card, and I'm going to get rid of these 2.
Okay. So the
So-
card that you're keeping for the purposes of this action are actually going to be
Oops.
face up at this point.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So all your the later ones that you get will be face up. So everyone can know what you're doing, but they aren't going to be able to do this or steal it from you or anything like that.
Mm.
So it's still your own like private objective, but it is one that people can kind of have a bit of an eye on what you might be doing.
So just to understand this card, my objective now is to build stops adjacent to developments. If I have 5 of them at the end of the game, I get 2 points. 7 of them at the end of the game, I get 5 points. And there's a
So-
little position for a lobbyist.
Yeah. So essentially, if at the end of the game you've done this this sort of top requirement, you're doing 5 as you said, and you get 2 prestige points at the end of the game. Awesome. If you think, hey, I might be able to do this harder version where I build 7 times and I get 5 points. So to actually do that, you're going to at some point take another action and put one of your lobbyists onto that space. And that's going to tell you and everyone else that instead of going for this lower requirement, you're going to go for this higher requirement and try to get the 5 prestige instead.
Oh, right. Okay.
Now, it's forgiving if you somehow only manage, 6 or 5 or whatever,
Mhm.
and you weren't able to get to that 7 requirement, you still will get the lower amount of points. So you're still going to get that buffer of the low number,
Right.
but you just have the option of getting to the bigger number.
So you cannot get the higher number unless you have a lobbyist on the card.
Exactly.
Right. David in the chat has just said that the other objective that I started with should be placed face down here.
Yeah, so I mean,
Okay.
the reasoning for that is that you can also put a meeple lobbyist rather onto this card as well.
Right.
I know that we can't see the space because it's face down, but
Yeah.
you will also have the opportunity to increase those points if you wanted to.
Got it.
On-
Because otherwise, because in this game you don't have anything in your hand.
No, you don't really have a true
Right,
hand
got it.
to work with. No.
Yeah. Okay. Right, I think that's my go done. So I went there, I did the action, which in year 1 was draw 3 of the objective cards, keep 1. That's it, done.
And you'll notice that the other ones get worse and worse in later years.
Yeah.
So it's better to do it earlier because you have more option to look at.
Okay, TK, you're up next.
Oh, cool. I want to do the same.
Okay.
Awesome.
Grab 3.
Okay.
Pay my permit. Oops. Grab 3.
So you draw 3, choose 1, keep it.
And
Yeah. Earl, you can probably be taking your turn while TK's doing that, I think.
Sure. Might take a bit more explanation from Tom again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me know Earl, what you're
Telegraph
gonna
all
do,
my
and then I'll
moves.
explain it.
Yeah.
Well, I think I might know what this one does. This one looks quite simple if you were doing one of the actions printed on the board, but you might be doing this instead. You're building instead.
Let's find out Earl, what are you doing?
I am actually going to take
Awesome.
the action that's on the
Okay,
on the
so
tile
yeah,
here.
so Earl's actually going to do the action that he has on his development that he purchased earlier in the game. So what this one is doing, again, it's in this action space, but he's not doing one of the normal actions on the board. He's doing the one on his tile. So he's going to pay 2 coins, which is the cost listed on the left here, and he's going to take either 1 power cube, which is the green lightning bolt, or 1 permit cube, which is the brown folder icon. And as well, he's going to also do whatever this is on the right. So I'm going to jump ahead on the action loop ahead of where Earl is. You'll notice that that icon on his tile also comes up right here as well.
Yeah.
So that's going to correspond to these orange construction cubes. So unlike the power, permit, and blueprint cubes that you'll notice are kind of a bit more singularly defined and also in these columns with coin costs, these construction cubes are a bit more together and there's no cost associated with them. So normally if you were to come to this space here and take this action, it's called collect depot. So what you're doing is you're collecting all the available construction cubes from the leftmost depot or little space. You'll notice that they're all kind of collected like that together. So in this example, if I was doing this action, I would just take all 4 of these. Now later in the game, there might not be 4. Maybe for some reason there's only 2, so maybe you only get 2. But again, there's no cost here, so you just do that for free. And you'll notice that it gets a little bit less and less as we get further down the line here. So what Earl is doing is he's being a little cheeky and he's getting himself not only 1 of his power cubes, or maybe
I took a permanent.
Permit,
yeah.
And
he's
all
also
of them.
action. Yeah. So Earl's kind of doing both at once, but he is spending 2 coins instead of just the 1 coin to do that.
And those construction cubes, they go on the same space that the other cubes. So you've only got 8 capacity.
So all cubes that you collect will go onto this 2x4 space, which again only holds 8. However, during your turn, you can exceed that maximum and sort of jettison any resources that you don't want back to their appropriate storage places. But you just have to end your turn with only 8 resource cubes.
Okay, got it.
Cool. So Earl's done his action. It looks like TK, you've already selected an agenda. Great.
So me next. So let's say again, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to skip that one, skip this one, but I'm going to go here. Now, what was that building that I placed? Aha.
So this building here is also another good one where, again, if you take one of these 2 actions, so either the ones that are on the board here,
I just get an extra one.
You get an extra one. Now, I haven't really explained too far how or why we're collecting these and what exactly we're using them for. Obviously, I think you know that now we use permits up here a lot.
Yeah.
And you'll notice that kind of more down the line, we're using maybe some of the other resources. The first resources that we're going to be using a lot of are going to be the orange construction cubes and the green power cubes. So I would probably recommend, for the purposes of this action, that you may want to take a power cube.
Yeah, can I buy more than 1?
So you can buy as many as you want, as long as you can A, afford it, and B, fit them on your player board at the end of the turn. Again, keeping in mind that you will get 1 for free.
Yeah, so if I buy 3, that costs me 4 money, but then I get 1 for free.
Exactly.
Okay. So
now, before you make that ultimate decision, just to save you from, Not that this is a mistake or anything. One thing to keep in mind is that money is extremely tight in this game. So
Okay.
we started with 12 coins. You
Yeah.
are certainly not going to get any more coins within the year unless you have some other kind of
Sure.
cool specific ability that might come up later. So the 12 coins you start with are the 12 coins you're working with through your 3 total cycles of the whole first year.
Yeah.
So you may want to just consider, because you're already getting an extra one for free, you may only want to just spend like 1 coin and just get your 2 and not spend the rest of them.
I'll go for a bit more. And
Okay,
just
yeah,
and just
or
see
you
what
can
happens.
do that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with, because again, what you're doing also is you're driving up that cost for everyone else. Right?
That's what I was thinking. Right, that's my action done. So the actions, just as I say, I went into this cold today. The actions themselves don't seem that complicated. There's obviously quite a lot of them, but they seem, I mean, that one was go there, spend money, buy cubes, but because I've got a building, I get 1 extra. That all seems fairly intuitive. And I have to say, the graphic design on this, and this is the first time I've seen the graphic design, and I don't know who did the graphic design, but it looks very clean and very easy to understand, which is always a good thing.
Awesome. I mean, definitely part of the graphic design was Earl. Earl was the guru behind that when we were sort of prototyping and building the game out originally. But Inside Out Games does have their own designer, Edu Valls, I believe is his name, who has also kind of definitely put his own spin on it and really taken it to kind of a new level, which is really great too. So, and as you said, the actions themselves are all, for the most part, extremely basic, extremely straightforward. There are a few like developments that, some of the actions get a little bit more complicated. The only action that's really kind of a bit of a brain burner tends to be the actual building of your subway line in the city, which, will be kind of, it's the big sort of like premier action where we're actually doing, the fun thing of building out our subway line. So it tends to be a little bit more involved, but once you kind of do it for the first time, I think it becomes pretty obvious as well. But the rest of the actions themselves are all quite simple. It's really more aligning them all together tends to be more complicated.
The sequencing of them. Right, TK, you're up.
All right, I had a question about my development. It's going to allow me to purchase my rails at a cheaper rate, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. Well, basically, I had a better ratio.
So normally
I was curious because.
Oh, it's here.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So normally when people are buying rails, they're using this little sort of option here, which is there's a few different kind of methods that you can use to purchase the rails from this sort of little shop, if you will. You can sort of mix and match here. Like you could spend, 10 coins for 12 rails, or I don't know, 8 coins for, 8 rails, or weird things like that. But this is normally what everyone else is going to be using to purchase their rails. But for you have this other option that you can do that, you spend money, but the rails that you get are much, just a little bit higher than everyone else. You'll notice, however, that the option here on the board to buy rails has kind of like a double color to it, the actual action space. So there's a few other areas like that as well. Here, for example, here. What those mean is that you can take those actions in either of the 2 zones.
Yeah.
So for buying rails, you can either do it, for example, in this area, or you can do it perhaps in this area here.
Right.
That's why it's double colored. However, TK, for your specific tile that you have, you'll notice on the top of it, it's only available in the end of the loop here. So that's your restriction with that ability, is that you can't also do it here, which everyone else does have that option. That might not sound like a big deal, but later on when you are thinking about, getting rails and then maybe doing the build action, which takes place here, that might be something you have to think about if you can like make all that work, right at the end of like the whole year or something like that.
Quick question from me. I know we discussed that the graphic design is not, this is not the finished version of the game, but just looking at the development that TK bought, should there be a minus sign in front of those numbers for the cost?
That was my question. Yeah, that was my biggest question.
Good call. Yeah.
Okay, they should. Right. Hopefully they'll fix that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just wanted to clarify because I was like, do I get money? Or
yeah, generally, whenever there's kind of like the sort of darker sort of arrow triangle kind of look, that's always going to be a cost, regardless of if it happens to not include that minus, which sometimes they might be missing. So,
right after Tom explained that money was tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So you go in there, it's your first
yeah,
upgrade, so
I'm
that's going to
gonna
cost
pay
you 2
2.
money. And that upgrade looks like it gives you a
Ooh.
A
Yeah,
construction.
so what
Construction.
this construction looking upgrade, what this means is whenever TK is spending construction cubes, which will
Okay.
happen at certain points in the game, it's going to be as if he has an extra
one.
permanent construction to use as part of that spend.
Right.
So every time he does it, it's like he has +1 to use, and that also means concurrently, if he's spending only 1 construction cube total for some reason, he only needs to spend 0 total cubes.
Oh, right.
'cause
Okay.
This acts as if he has +1.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it.
Okay.
Cool.
Back to me here. All right. Well, Tom, you're gonna explain capacity, I think, because
Okay,
I'm
cool.
probably
So
gonna
Earl's
do
going
that.
to do this kind of action down here. So you'll notice that it has a -X with the construction symbol, and then these kind of teardrop shapes here, which we haven't really probably looked at before. So this is called increased capacity. Now, when we are building our subway line, obviously you can guess that what we're doing is we are going to be placing our disks onto the board and dropping them kind of in much the same way we put our prime hubs down. So that's kind of like part of the act of building right now. Before we can actually do that, you'll notice that below our lovely row of disks, at the very left of that row is a teardrop shaped sort of space, and then there's kind of a marker called the capacity marker. So the capacity marker
Right.
is
Yes,
something
this
that
one.
we need to be moving over in order to unlock the disks to then be built later on in another action. So what Earl's doing is he is trying to move his capacity marker over, so that he can eventually build those build those disks onto the board later on another turn.
So right now, with my capacity marker where it started, I cannot build any other discs. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So
Oh, right.
all these
Okay.
disks to the right are locked for you. You'll have to eventually move these over using the action that Earl is currently in the process of doing. So
Right.
what Earl's doing is he's going to again take this action here that is in this little orange kind of zone of the action loop.
Mhm.
And what this means is that for every single one of these teardrop shapes that he is moving to the right, so he starts here. If he's going to go 1, 2, 3, he's going to pay 1 construction cube for each of those spaces. So he has his 3 cubes here ready to get paid. And then this extra spot here, you'll notice below that there's a power cube symbol. So in addition to paying his orange cube, his construction cube, he's also paying 1 power cube. So that's going to be an additional cost. And you'll notice that it comes up later on throughout the game more and more.
But he's got the upgrade that allows him to use brown as if it was green.
Upgrade.
Right.
So he's using this brown as if it was a green cube, a power cube.
Yep.
So that's his total spend. So he's spending 4 total cubes back to their respective
Nice.
markets. And he's moved that up 3 times, which means that at some point in this year, hopefully, he can maybe build 3 of his discs.
Yeah.
Using a turn.
So on my turn, I mean, I can go to this same space, but I can't do that action because I don't have any orange cubes.
We don't have any orange cubes yet, so don't worry too much about not being able to like do that in the first cycle. Earl just happened to, get himself in a position to be able to do that. I think more to show what that looks like.
Yeah.
But in a normal game, you may not be doing that action quite so early.
So my other options are, if I go here, I could take, and I would take these 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or I could buy some.
Yes.
Rails.
Now buy some rails. Now keep in mind that before you can build any of your discs, you do need to do what Earl just did, which means it's going to require you to have these construction cubes. So that may be the prudent action is to take the cubes now.
Yeah.
Then you can do the action that he did. And then later on in a further cycle down the line, you can get your rails and then eventually build. So that's sort of the cycling that you're doing is first you're doing the capacity stuff, and then you're getting your stuff to be able to build.
Yeah. We've talked about placing the discs, and I can't place the discs because I haven't increased my capacity.
Yeah.
But placing rails, is there any restriction on that?
So I'm not going to go through the entirety of the build action quite yet until someone actually does a build, but suffice to say that the rails that you're going to be using to build are going to be ones that have to be on your actual player board.
Yeah.
So right now we only have one. Eventually, if you can get more using, the action here, for example, to get them on your player board, those are going to be the ones that you use as part of that actual build action to get onto the city board as part of placing your unlocked stations, your station discs, onto the city. So all
Yeah.
that stuff is going to happen in one really big action.
Right. But
Yeah.
do I need the orange cubes in order to build the rails?
You're not going to be needing the orange cubes to sort of put the rails onto the city board,
Okay.
but you'll have to have another way to have put your rails first onto your own player board.
Yeah, but that's
If
what
they're
this
not on-
action is here.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So my options are spend 2 to get one rail, spend 3 to get 3, or spend 5 to get 6.
Yeah.
Or is that just 1 for 1? At the bottom.
So when you're taking this action, you can sort of combine them if you want. You can do just one of them. You can do any kind of combination that you want, as long as, again, you can afford
Mhm.
to, whatever you're paying. But it's up to you how many you kind of want to afford. You'll notice on the player board, between each circle, each of the circles, there's these 2 white lines.
Yeah.
So each of those indicates a rail space
Right.
that needs a rail spot.
Yeah.
So you need a minimum of 2 rails between each of these circles
Got it,
when you're
got it.
building. So you're going to need at least one more rail because you already
Yeah.
have one total. That's kind
Okay.
of how that's
I'll
gonna work.
I'll do this action. That's fine. I'm just a bit puzzled by this bottom one here. Is this $1 for one rail?
So the bottom thing here is just telling you that this is the action. This is the action.
Oh,
of
right. And then
you
the costs are
and
above
this
it.
is just what the cost is. Yeah.
Right. Got
Similar to how this is just what this is.
it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go there and I'll spend 3 money and I'll buy 3 rails.
Okay.
There you go. 1, 2, 3, and done.
Okay,
Right.
over to
That's it.
TK.
All right, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to take these 2 and pay 2.
Cool. So 1 and 1.
Yeah. So some actions can be really short and simple, can't they? Just go
Yeah.
there, spend money, get permits, done.
Yep. And for a TK opposite, he got pretty lucky that his cubes that he bought were all both $1. So
Yeah.
he spent very little money there, right? Which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. So
Over to Earl.
All right. I'm also going to buy rails, but I'm just
Yeah.
going to
So
take
he's
it
going to
on
use this action, but he's using it in this area of
Yeah.
the loop, which
yeah,
he can
which
do
is fine.
because it's color coded there.
And I'll do the same thing. I'll just spend 3 coins.
3 for 3?
And take 3 rails.
Okay.
Nice.
So I'm
and easy.
just looking at the other actions that are available here. I don't think I can do this because I don't have 2 orange cubes.
Yep. So this action here, which actually is this whole big thing here, this all
Mhm.
is one big action. This is one thing that may get updated graphically. It looks maybe like maybe 2 actions, but it is actually one big action. This is actually the build action. So this is where
Right.
we are building our subway. It does encompass a lot of resources, a lot of things happening. We're placing our rails, we're placing our discs, we're spending a lot of different resources. So once someone gets to that, we'll kind of get into how that works.
Mm.
But that's kind of the big premier action of the game. There's also this other action up here, which I'll kind of get to a little bit later as well. But that just is another way for us to score prestige at the end of game. This top one here. But
Okay.
I'll kind of get to that a little
Well,
bit later as well.
I mean, you say get to that a little bit later. I might do that now because I can't choose this action because I don't have any construction cubes. But I do have power.
Sure.
So I could potentially choose this action.
Cool. So I'll explain this action. It does look like right now, I don't think you can do it, but later
Okay.
on you probably will have a way to do it at some point in the game. So how this action would normally work is, again, you'll spend the 1 power as you noticed,
Mhm.
and there's kind of a symbol with a little
Yeah, it
hexagon
looks like
shape.
it's this.
Exactly. So so these tokens that have been placed into the city on top of our developments are called demand. This is kind of representing like, a lot of commuters or a lot of riders or potential riders want to ride the subways in certain areas of the city. It's kind of like the demand of transit infrastructure or something like that. And what we're doing is we are paying a power cube and we're taking one of these demand tokens and we're going to be putting it on our player board in this sort of top right area of the player board. And you'll notice that
Points
the more
at
of
the end
those
of
we
the game.
place, the more points we can get at the end of the game. However, the restriction of being able to take these off the developments and putting them onto our board is, you notice that these are, if you hover over them, they
Color coded.
they're color coded, but also they have the name of one of these districts of the city. So the districts are all named on the outer edges of the city. So what that means is, in order to take one of these, you'll need a stop built in that district of the city. So it's not going to matter that you've built next to this tile. That has no bearing on you taking that demand. What matters is that you've built a stop in upper ward, which is up in this corner.
Yeah.
So right now, no one's built there, so no one can claim this. This
Got
one
it.
is Tarragon Hills. Right now, also no one has built in Tarragon Hills. Red is really close. If Red ends up building maybe here or here, he could eventually maybe take this. And then Earl actually is the only one who could, if he wanted, take this one because he actually has a stop built in Old Cross.
Right. Okay.
So eventually, if he wanted, he could maybe buy this. Now, if this tile, just to confirm how it works, if this tile happened to be like way over here or something like that, Earl can still take that because he's, again, built in Old Cross. It doesn't matter that he's not next to that tile.
You're not creating a route from A to B, then you just...
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So,
Okay. So we won't do that action, which means I have reached the end.
Yeah. So now that you've reached the end, you're going to take your cycle marker and you'll move it one space down. And now you've gone one cycle through the first year, and you can now continue moving and taking another action around the top of the loop. So you can, go back here, wherever you kind of want to go.
So I don't pause for a turn. I just go around, move that down.
Part of your normal turn. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this was spending a permit on the left-hand side. We've got an action here.
Yeah, so this action you'll notice is about lobbyists, and you'll notice that also it doesn't have a resource, a cost of any kind. So what this action allows us to do is move lobbyists around in different places in the game. So there's a few different ways you can move lobbyists around. So you can move them, for example, from a tile that you have already, maybe to like another tile. You can move them from a tile back to your player board. You can move them from maybe your player board to one of these agendas that you have. If you're like, oh, I really think I can do this, you can move them onto those. So there's kind of a number of different ways you can move them around, and you're free to do that once. You can see it says a 1 there. So you can move one lobbyist total from those kind of different spaces to another one of those spaces. The only area of the game where you do not move lobbyists around using this action is these big cards here. These project cards only get manipulated through this action only.
And I can't use this action to move a lobbyist from my player board to somebody else's development? Or can I?
Only if you have built a stop next to one of those areas there. So if you built like in one of those arrowed areas that I showed there, you could potentially put one here. But right now, none of us have the ability to do that. So.
Right. So there's nothing here for me to do. I can't really do either of these actions.
The only thing you could do if you wanted to take this action is you could move a meeple from your player board onto one of these.
Oh, onto here. Yeah, no, that's fine.
To do that.
And this one, again, I can't do this because I don't have any permits. So I think we're coming here.
Yeah.
Now, these
here's where
blueprint cubes. I'm trying to remember what the blueprint cubes do.
The main reason we're going to need these blueprint cubes is eventually you'll notice at the build subway action, there is a
for discs
for blue. So what that means is, so in Earl's example, Earl has 3 discs already unlocked because he moved his capacity marker. Whenever he's building, each of those discs that he wants to place into the city will cost him 1 blueprint each.
Right.
So if Earl wants to try to build all 3 of these discs, that's going to cost him 3 total blueprints to place into the city.
Right. I'm going to take 2 blueprints, put them on there, and that cost me 2 money, which might be the wrong thing to do, but that's my turn done.
Okay.
Right, TK.
All right. I'm going to come up here and snag these 3 construction.
Yeah, which I'm now realizing is what I should have done, but that's fine. It's a learning game.
No worries.
Right, it's 4 o'clock. The Kickstarter has been live for an hour. Does somebody just want to go and quickly have a look to see how well it's doing?
Yeah, we're at 34,500. The pledge goal is 39,900. So we're about 5,000 away, 488.
So it's gonna fun today. There's no surprise on that.
Yet.
Yeah.
15-20 minutes, I would guess.
Yeah, excellent.
Something like that. Pretty cool.
All right. So I'm just taking my turn here. So I've moved my cycle marker, same as Paul, And I will spend another permit and take another development.
Mm.
He's going to do the same action he did in the first year, first
Yep.
loop, first cycle, and he's just going to take another one of these.
Now, a
And
question
I
about,
think-
obviously, we're placing these developments on the space, on the square between the circles.
Yep.
We're covering up things by doing that.
Yes.
Right.
So you'll notice, as you've kind of mentioned, there are some rail spots underneath here. Once they get covered, they're no longer usable. So
Yeah.
if you put something here, for example, all those potential rail spots are now gone from the game total.
Because the
And as well,
foundations of the building are taking up the space where the subway
Exactly.
would be. Yeah.
And obviously, if there's already a tile somewhere on the board, you can't cover that tile up
Okay.
with a second tile or anything like that.
Yeah.
And
Alright,
if there were
so-
already rails being used in those spaces, so for example, if you had started to build, through this little space here,
Mhm.
then I can't or someone else can't put a tile on top of your
Yeah.
subline there.
Yeah.
So Earl selected a second development. So this development is very similar to the one that you've taken, Paul. It's
Yeah.
just
Get
this
one
action
extra
here,
blueprint.
and it gives him an extra blueprint instead.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my turn.
Is it me? It's me
Back to
already.
Paul. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm running out of space on my board. But if I go here, I can buy more power or more permits, which I don't need. I need the orange cubes.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you are right that you're pretty full up, so you may
Yeah.
consider skipping out right now. And you can go here and maybe acquire these construction cubes. Now you only have space for 3, but you could take
Exactly.
all 4 and put one of these back if you wanted to. It's up to you.
when do you
however
have to discard down to 8?
by the end of your current turn.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be able to use any of these, am I? So
Yeah.
Like,
so
if I
you'll be
take
able to-
4,
you'll-
I'll lose
Yeah.
one straight away. So yeah.
Mhm.
So this is why earlier on you were advising me not to take that extra power, and that's why. So
Darn it, yeah.
I just go there. I get those 3.
worries.
That's me done.
That looks good. I mean, you have a lot of resources, which is good.
I'm just making a
You
mental
still have
note.
5
When the designer
so-
gives you advice, listen to him. Right, there you go. I've written that down.
All
right. And while it was not my turn, I closed the $5,000 gap by about $60. So
Awesome.
you guys
Nice.
are a little
Amazing.
closer. I always try to be
Amazing,
back
thank
in number 1, but like this happened right at the time it
Yeah.
launched.
we got in the
Yeah.
way of that.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. All right. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to trigger my development. I'm going to spend 4 to get 6 cubes.
Amazing. Yeah.
Or not cubes, rails. I'll
Rails,
spend
yeah.
5.
So this is
grab
using
one
your
back.
Using his
Yeah.
nice
4
tile.
for 6.
Yes. Yes, which is much better than, what is it? 5 for
3 or 5
It'd
for 6.
be 5 for 6. So yeah,
Yeah.
saved $1.
Yeah, so that's me.
Okay, back to
Great.
Earl.
So I'll just telegraph a little bit. I used that permit to take a development, but I was also planning to take an objective. So I'm gonna have to not be able to do that, and I'm just gonna skip forward here.
Oh, because you've
And-
run out of permits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
used
I
it
think I
already.
was saving it for that, but I
Well, you
may
say you've
have-
run out of
yeah.
permits. So you can't. Your orange is not a
Mhm.
wild, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
The orange is the only one that doesn't count as wild, mainly because it's obviously easier to get because they're
Get,
free
yeah.
and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, so that being said, I did just put this in here, so I am going to take advantage of that,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I'm just going to spend 1 coin to take one of them. I'll just get my change here real quick. So I'll buy a
And then
blueprint.
you get an
and
extra one
more
for free.
free.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's my turn.
Right. So it's me. Am I in a position where I can build? No.
Not quite yet. You're
because
still
I-
the next thing you're going to be doing is eventually increasing that capacity like Earl did. So that's kind of going to be something you'll have to do as you come back around. So it may be probable that you won't build any actual stops and stuff in the first year, which is not
Hmm.
bad. It's not the end of the world. It just means that you'll probably be setting yourself up to build a lot more in that second year.
Yeah, because the problem I've got is that I've hit the limit of 8 cubes.
Yeah.
Which means
The
I
only way you
can't
can increase your capacity, which is the thing you need to do to eventually build, is
exactly.
in the space you're at. So you'll have to use a whole other cycle around
Hmm.
to eventually get back here and do that. and then spend all that stuff that you have.
David in the chat is
So-
saying that I could build 2 rails. How can I build 2
Oh.
rails?
Uh,
Because looking at
so-
this action here, which, as you said, the
Oh,
graphic
yeah.
design might change on this, but it looks like I have to spend 1 permit and 2 construction cubes in order to be able to build rails. But is that not true?
Yeah. So that's all technically correct. The only problem is
Okay.
that you actually don't have any permits.
Yeah.
You have everything but permits on your board.
Okay.
So if you had even 1 permit, you could do what you
I
just
would
said.
have been able to do it. Right. Okay.
You could do that, but unfortunately, that's also not quite possible. But
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. I mean, again, the first year sometimes is just setting up to build a lot more later on. It's not
Yeah.
like, you don't lose the game because you don't build in the first year. It's not
No,
the end of
but
the
I
world.
can very clearly see the mistakes that I've made
Sure.
with the cubes that I've taken. Quick question. Are you able to just remove a cube from your supply if you want
Not
to, and
unless
just
not unless you are like taking an action that would allow you to jettison that cube because you're full.
right? Okay. And another question. One versus the board is in the chat. Thank you very much for joining in. It's a very good question. Is the tabletop simulator mod that we're using today public? And the answer is yes. It's gone
Yes.
public for the Kickstarter. So if you wanted to learn it, the rules are in there, and you can go on and you can start playing it with your friends now. It is available as a mod on the public tabletop simulator workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I can't do this one, which means we're skipping back round. Oh no, oh no, and I still can't do that action there. So we are skipping round again, which means that goes down. I can't do this one because I don't have any permits. I can't do that one because I don't have any permits. I think the only thing I can do really is buy an upgrade.
Yeah, you could buy an upgrade.
So let's
Now,
buy an upgrade.
to potentially try to like save face and maybe actually give yourself a way to build.
Yes,
The upgrade that you may want to actually buy
the wild
is
resource.
This upgrade is actually this upgrade here.
Oh,
on the
okay.
bottom right. So this is
Yeah.
called extra action, which will allow you to actually take a second action on one of your turns.
Right.
So you kind of get like back-to-back actions. That's going to be helpful because it might allow you to actually do everything you need to build in this last little set of kind of turns here. So
Because I was thinking the wild resource would help me.
The only problem with that is that you're going to probably be spending some of these construction at the same place you might need to get some of them. So this extra action might allow you to kind of do things a little bit
Sure.
easier.
Okay.
Um,
Let's take that
yeah.
one.
Cool. So I think you've spent your.
I've spent the
which
money.
is good.
That's gone on there. That's my action done. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So that's your turn, and then later on, I'll kind of show you how you might be able to use that to do something kind of helpful.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm cycling around.
Mm-hmm.
I'm less prepared this go around. I don't necessarily want to do one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm just going
Yeah.
here.
Come and join the party here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I think I'm going to take these two.
At a cost of 4.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's all my money.
Your money. And keep in mind, you do
it's there to be
hypothetically
spent.
have
Starting.
one last cycle, so just
I
think about
do.
that. Yeah.
But I want to put down 2 stations.
Now,
Right.
one thing I will mention is you do have a couple permits. There are other tiles up here that allow you to get some money during the year, which is not always something you can do. But some of these tiles are a bit special in that they do give you the possible option of getting some money back within a year. So, if
Okay.
you spend those all 4 of your coins now, you might still be able to like use one of these permits to get one of those and get some money and blah blah blah. But it's sort of up to
Okay.
you whether or not you want to
I think
try that.
for the people at home, we're going to see what happens when we have no money.
do it. Who needs money anyway?
That's right.
Great.
All right,
So I think
that's
you
me.
just did
Okay.
that. Back to me here. I'm gonna head over here. So I think I am going to take the same action again because I do want some construction. So I will spend 2, take 1 back. Let's change. And I'm going to pick one of these. So I'm going to pick permit, but not super ideal here. I'm only taking this 1 construction because it's the only one left here.
Hmm. So the downside for you of me being unable to take all 4 is that you only get to take 1.
Exactly.
I only
yeah.
take 1, yeah.
Hmm.
So that's it. That's my turn. Spent the money, took the resources.
Yeah.
Back to Paul.
So now, Paul, what I might recommend here, because you now
Yeah.
have this nice action tile, I'll explain kind of a little bit how this works. So once per year, so you'll notice that there's a year icon on this extra action upgrade. So what that means is that once per year, you'll be able to
Oh,
actually
that's
do
what
this.
that is. Yeah. Okay.
So you can take 1 additional action on your turn either before or after your normal action. So you're not going to move your marker when you do that. So you can either do it like right now without moving your marker around and then take your other action as normal, or
Right.
you can take an action as normal and then do another action as well without moving the marker again.
And it's
And that
any of the actions, isn't it?
it's any action either on the loop or an action that you have access to from a tile.
Sure.
So now what I would probably recommend is you flip this to use it. So we'll kind of burn that and flip it.
Yeah.
That way we know that you've used it. And I would recommend just doing increased
This
capacity.
action. Yeah.
Exactly. Because now you can do exactly what Earl did. You can move it 3 times.
3 times, which cost me a power as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
so
put all these away
1,
for
2,
you.
3. Thank you. So that was my
Your
action.
extra action. And now you can go to that market green action and you can buy a permit, which will then sort of allow you to eventually get to build. If you
And I get
those
an extra permit,
extra one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and that cost me 2 money,
And as long as you can get 2 more construction cubes,
which I
you'll
can.
be able to build a couple of stops.
Yeah. Cool.
At the end of this loop.
Okay. Yeah, those upgrades are nice, aren't they?
Yes. And then it's TK's turn.
All right, so I want to come up here.
I think I moved you. Sorry.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, that's all right.
I don't know
Yeah,
why I
that's
moved
all
you. I
right.
never play red. So
All good. I'm skipping that one anyway.
okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to do this one. I'm just going to spend 2 of the ones I have. There's 1.
Yeah. And then if you are spending a second one, that could come from here because that would be.
Oh, that's right.
You
Yeah.
could actually save these 2, yeah.
But you can't spend 3 because you don't have the power to go to the third
Exactly, yeah.
space.
You don't have
Right.
the power.
Exactly.
So thematically, what's capacity representing?
Earl, I'll let you handle that one.
Think of capacity as sort of the infrastructure, so be able to support all the stations that you've built, all the trains and everything. That's kind of why you imagine that additional power, right? So
Right.
just kind of everything underneath the actual subway line that you have there. So you can't
Okay.
build more because then you're dealing with overcrowding or kind of like wear and tear of your subway line. So that's meant to be the thematic reason.
Got it.
It's like
Yeah.
all the non-transit part of what
Yeah.
goes into that kind of
The other stuff.
Mm-hmm. Hence why it's underneath the station track there as well. to
Right.
kind of-
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So I think I would like to take construction, but I don't really need it right now. I do have enough to build, so I think I'm just gonna skip ahead here, and we're gonna see some building happening.
Okay.
So Earl's going to do this last action on the loop here. This is going to be the build action. So how this is going to work is there's kind of a couple stages to his action. The first thing is to just take the action at all, regardless of what you end up placing into the city. You have to spend 1 permit and 2 construction. So that's like, think of that as almost like your entry fee to be able to even do this action. So
Yeah.
Earl spends this first, and that allows them to be able to do everything else. So he spends that, and then he's going to spend 1 blueprint for every single disc that he wants to eventually build. So it looks like he's going to build 2 discs. So he's putting 2 of these permits here to show us that. And then any rails that he's going to place down has to come from his player board. So they can't come from his supply.
Yeah.
He can't like buy them and then use them right now or whatever. And he has to have them already. So he has 4. Now, when he's building, he has to build, first of all, away from his original prime hub. So this is where we started. So he's going to have to build in one direction away from that prime hub. So he's going to build in this direction. He has to be able to place all the rails and the discs down as he's building. So he can't like skip these spots and say, oh, I'll put the rails down later, or he can't, say, oh, I'll put this disc down later and just go like that. He's
Right.
got to have it fully completed at all times as he's kind of doing it.
Oh,
so
so earlier on, when we were suggesting I had the option of building 2 rails, are you saying that I can't actually do that? You've got to put the disc at the end?
So you are right, but also wrong. One of the other
Okay.
ways that you can build, so in a subway system, you know that a lot of the subway lines often connect to each other, right? You get
Yeah.
on the green line and then you get to like the yellow line or whatever. So in this example, you can potentially have built your own rails to TK's stop here,
Right.
and that will allow you to like connect to him. And then later on, if you want, you can build out from Red's stop in one of these other directions.
Okay,
So that's
got
kind
it.
of a way to actually do that. If he hadn't been next to you, then you wouldn't have been able to do that.
Right.
But that is sort of a
Yeah.
potential
Okay.
way to do that. So that's kind of why it's technically legal, I suppose.
Yes. So yeah, you built 2 rails there and then the station, and then another 2 rails and the station. Could that second lot of 2 rails been here?
So great question. Right now, the only way that we can build is as Earl's building, every new stop he puts down becomes the area where he has to build from. So we call that
Oh.
our terminus. So it's like the end point of our line. So if Earl had just built only that, whenever he builds again, either on the current turn, which he's doing, or on a subsequent turn, he's always building out from that last stop that he
Oh,
built. at.
right.
So in this example, Earl built in this way, and now whenever he builds again later, this
It
is now
has to
his
be from
terminus.
here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now you asked about building away from somewhere else. Later on, there is a way to do that, but we'll get to that once that becomes like an available way to do. But right now, that's not something that we can do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I've paid up and I've built, and that's. I'm just gonna put my resources back.
Cool.
And what that's
But
doing is
that is my
that's
turn.
increased your income.
Yeah. So
Yes.
in the
And-
subsequent year, he's going to get 14 coins instead
Uh-huh.
of 12 coins.
And presumably you've going towards one of your objectives as well by putting some discs on the board.
Hopefully that is what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So
Earl-
I'm going here and I am taking 2 cubes. And
Exactly.
that's it. And I'm glad there was 2 cubes.
Exactly the two that you need.
Otherwise, there may have been a technical problem with the stream while I went for a cry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's your action, and then over to TK.
Yeah.
All right, quick question about stations and hubs. How do they become hubs? Is that just you build a station on top of one you already have?
Yeah. So
As the station action?
Yeah, so eventually, right now, you don't have the ability to build hubs, but later on, you will unlock, an additional way to build that will allow you to do that. So right now, we can only build a single high disk stop, the stations like these, but later on in the game, you can either, as Earl did, you can put these down on top of them like this, for example, like that, or you can build 2 at once and kind of build a hub all together in one space. So right now you can only build the stations, but later on you'll be able to build those hubs at some point through the game.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to build these 4 rails and 2 stations, which
Cool.
I'll pay everything for. So I'll have to pay, 2 blueprints, 2 construction, and 1 permit?
Yeah, exactly. And one of your construction is going to be permanent because you have this, so you only need to spend one of those cubes.
And I'm doing so. Oh, it's not me
there's
next.
Construction,
When it's me next, I'll be doing something very similar.
2 blueprints, and 1 permit. Yep, so I think I'm all set.
Right.
Cool.
All right.
So you time to build as well.
So I think that's back to me here. I know I'm going to be going to my final loop here of the year. Don't have permits, don't have any of this, but I think just to slow play a little bit, I'm gonna take this action, which I think none of us have actually done. So that's
Nope.
great. So Tom, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, so this is the action where I mentioned you can move lobbyists around. So Earl's going to be taking one of his lobbyists from somewhere. looks like from his player board, and then moving it onto his one private agenda that he has here. So if you kind of hover over the action up here, it kind of gives you a bit of an idea
tells
of
you.
where and how you can move. And
Mm.
again, there's no cost. There's no like coin or resource cost there. It's just moving the lobbies is sort of the cost itself in a way.
So Earl's confident that he's going to be able to do the upgraded version of that
Exactly.
Mhm.
on there.
And later on, if Earl realizes, oh wow, I actually can't do this, he can actually take that action again later on
Move
and
it.
move this somewhere else.
Right.
So you can
Yeah.
sort of you can backtrack if he really needs to, but right now he's just
Okay.
to show the action. In a way.
I think I want to take this time just real quick. Someone noted that the project is now
Has
funded.
funded.
Hey, look at
Yes.
that, 40,000, we hit it.
Congratulations,
Whoa.
guys.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
And everybody involved in the game, because working in the industry
Mhm.
myself, I know how much work goes into it. Obviously, you guys are the designers, but then you have the developers, you have the publishers, you have the graphic designers, you have the rulebook writer, the team of people that goes into making a game.
yeah.
Just getting it to where it is, it's a big team.
It's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
Earl, did you take out a $40,000 loan to back that? Is that what you said?
Yes, I'm all 567 backers.
Yeah. Okay. No, 566 because TK's definitely backed it. So
I did. Yeah.
right, I've spent my permit, I've spent my 2 construction, so I can place as many rails as I want to, technically, but
Mhm.
I have to put a station on the end of each
Exactly.
set of 2.
Any of all these empty spaces need to be filled by the as you're kind of building
Yeah.
that out. So
Well, luckily,
probably
I have got
gonna be-
4 rails and I have got 2
Mhm.
blueprints, so it's as if I'd planned it, but that
Mhm.
was more due to luck rather than judgment. Okay, so, but as you're saying, what I could have done is I could have just put 2 of the rails there, and that would have meant that I didn't need to place a station. But by
Exactly.
placing the station,
Now-
it's going to increase my income.
Exactly, yeah. Now the reason you might not want you may want to connect through other players' stops like that is either maybe, as you said, you don't have blueprints to spend, you need to save
Mhm.
them for something else, or maybe one of your objectives, or maybe one of these goal cards you're looking at, it requires you to go a really far distance across the city, so you want to save spending a lot of blueprints and just kind of get across a lot faster.
Mm,
So there's that kind of idea as well.
yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of a bit of a strategical decision in terms of where and why you might want to do that.
There's also these funny routes as well, so you don't have to go,
Exactly,
like
yeah.
like
So if
we've
you wanna-
done.
If you want to cut across a little faster, you can sort of cut through the middle of these blocks.
Yeah.
Now you'll notice that these generally require a few more
Yeah,
rail pieces. So like to get from here to there without going here, you also need the 4, and then you only spend 1 of the 2 blueprints. So
yeah. I mean, what I would have done if Earl hadn't have built here is I would have probably gone there to there and then there and then there. Probably, but anyway,
I don't
that's
think
going to
there's
go on
enough
there.
rails. Yeah.
That's going to go on there. And then that's going to go on there. And that's going to go on there. There you go.
awesome.
We're done.
So
That's
we-
that. That's that
everyone's,
action done. Right,
Great.
TK,
Sweet.
your 3rd loop
All right.
round.
Yes. All right. So I think I'm going to come up here and grab a development.
Yeah, David's made a good
I was
point in
looking
the
at the
chat.
money
If
ones.
if I'd have built a station here, it meant I could have then placed a lobbyist on there.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
a later turn if you wanted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Now,
I'm
later
going.
on, you could get there elsewhere, like
Yeah.
another way, but that's
Yeah.
just a hypothetical. Yeah.
Okay.
So I know TK, you're asking about maybe getting some extra money from some of these.
Right.
So one example would be this one down here, for example, is allowing you to get some extra coins when you take either of these 2 sort of strategy goal related actions over here. So whenever you just do
Okay.
these, you get extra money. So there's that. This one over here is a little bit similar, where this one allows you to actually expend a lobbyist permanently from the game. So you just basically get rid of a guy and then you get 6 coins immediately. So that's kind of another big one that you can use to get coins. But keep in mind that we only have 8 total lobbyists to work with. So
Mm,
getting rid of even one of them is, pretty high cost. But
Right.
6 coins
Well,
also.
now we all will get 14, right? At the start
Yeah,
of the
you're all
round
getting
based
good
on
money
reputations.
when we get into the second year. So it's not like the be all end all to not have money right now. But
Right.
if you do want to be able to spend money within this last cycle you're in, you're going to have to, potentially get some something.
Right. Okay. I think what I might do is I think I'm going to take this one,
Okay.
right? And that's a green,
Okay.
so I can throw it down
Mm-hmm.
because it kind of matches with where I've got a station, be able to pick it up, and it allows me to pick up more in a different way. So, yeah, I think I'll do that. So that's going to cost me one of my permits.
Mhm.
Cool. And then lastly, you can also put another lobbyist on this tile
Alright.
to note that
Okay.
you have access to it. And just one thing to note with this tile is unlike, this action obviously is very similar to this action. It's pretty much the same thing, but you get some extra money. Again, the caveat to this one is you can only do it in the space that you're currently in. So it's something that isn't like available in both spots, much like your other tile here.
Right.
Thing to keep in mind there.
Great.
Back to Earl.
Yeah. I'm skipping a few turns here. I don't have a lot of money, but I'd certainly like to do a few more things. So I'm gonna tap this ability again, spend my last 2 coins for the year, and I will take a power cube and the leftmost depot here.
That's really strong, isn't it, that action? Especially with the sequencing, because you get to take them there and there, which means you can then go there and spend them.
It's super helpful for me for sure.
Yeah, pretty strong. Plus, combined with his wild resource, it's
It's like he's played the game before.
Yeah,
I've played it a couple times, I think. Yeah. That's my turn. So back to Paul.
Yeah, so I think I'm done. So what happens? Do I put myself...
your third cycle. So what we're going to do is you're going to put yourself at the very top of this little card here, kind of in the top. This
Closest
top
to
one,
the edge of the board.
Oh, right. Okay, yep.
We'll put this up here just to note you're done.
I'll be the first player next round.
Yeah, so you're going to be first player, which is nice. You'll be able to do things first. You'll notice that there's also a little symbol here next to it. What that means is that in your second year's income, in addition to all the other fun things we get, you also will get an extra cube of your choice when we do our second year's income.
Yeah.
So because you passed first, you get an extra little bonus as well. So there's just that will be forthcoming a bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, you'll be out of the round and you'll wait just till everyone pass. We're almost through the first year here.
Cool. And we're back to TK.
Because you say, even though
I should have took that.
Even though theoretically TK could have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 actions, he's not going to because it doesn't have the resources.
Right, I don't have any money. Yeah.
He has 1 orange cube, which isn't really helpful.
Yeah.
And not any money, but maybe he'll be able to eke out a few things, but he's jumping ahead, it looks like, so maybe I'm wrong.
Okay. And in the chat, Carter has just popped in. Carter is part of the Inside Up Games team. So excellent is in there. Because one of the questions that we've had is about the solo mode, which I was going to speak about at the end of the video. But if Carter's here and wants to sort of, discuss that in the YouTube chat, that'd be great.
Great. I will take my turn here. So 1, 2, 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all of my resources and I'm going to increase my capacity again. So I'm taking this action.
Wow.
So I'm just using all that, moving up 1, 2, 3 spots.
Yeah.
And I'm using that power cube as well for the additional.
Yep.
But mostly the reason I'm doing that is for Tom to be able to explain kind of those nice upgrades.
You'll notice that when Earl moved his capacity marker a second time, this time here, he crossed over this little gear upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
So this gear upgrade that pops up a couple times on our row of capacity things here is these 2 things down here. So I mentioned that there's a way to eventually build hubs, and there's a way to eventually build out from that original prime hub another time. So what Earl's doing is he's going to select one of these 2 special sort of build abilities that he now has access to throughout the game. And then later on, when he crosses this one later on, he'll be able to take the second one at some other point. So it's just a matter of which one you want first or second.
They're fixed upgrades that all players have at the start of the game, but you get them by moving the capacity marker up.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it.
They're like free upgrades that are locked until you move the capacity marker a certain distance. and then you're able to, use them throughout the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Earl looks like he's chosen the hubs one. So this is going to allow Earl to either place his current, new discs on top of his pre-existing discs, or when he builds new discs onto the board, to then also place another disc directly on top of it. Again, all those discs use blueprints regardless of how he puts them down, and then that allows him to build what's called hubs. Now, hubs are important because they might be certain goals. For example, this goal here asks you specifically to build hubs. You might have some private things that say, hey, build hubs to do this or whatever. So there might be things like that.
Okay.
And as well, you notice that hubs generally don't require you to have rails, which saves you some money as well, right? So there's that as well.
Okay.
And
I'm done, so no more turns for me.
And we're back to TK.
All right, and I think I will be done as well.
Okay.
Okay.
And then Earl.
I think I'm also.
Okay, everyone's already also done. Cool.
I'm also done too.
Awesome. So that's the first year. So everyone's built, which is great, and everyone put at least one tile down. Everyone has, some nice objectives and things like that. So we'll move into the second year. Kind of move this down. We'll just move these tiles a little bit further, closer to the board here. So in the beginning of the second year, again, we're going to all get our yearly budget. So that's going to be, for all of us, it happens to be all 14 coins. So you can take 14 coins from the things here. For purple, for Paul, you're getting an extra resource cube.
Yeah.
Any kind of your choice. And then TK, because you passed second, you also get an extra coin because there's a coin symbol here. Earl, unfortunately, doesn't get anything because he's the one who passed last. And the reasoning behind that is just the idea is here, if you are maybe playing as well, you might be a bit suboptimal. So maybe you take less actions and thus you pass first, versus Earl maybe played a little bit better than everyone else. He took more turns, so he doesn't need a bit of an extra cushion or a little bit of a benefit or whatever. So that's kind of the idea behind that. And the idea to here is, if you think you might want those extra things, maybe you pass earlier than everyone else to get those extra goodies. As opposed to anyone else. In a 4 or 5 player game, there's a bit more stuff that people get. Like in a 5 player game, people get a coin and a resource if they're the first player.
Right. So this is a card which is slid under the board.
Yes.
Because we're a 3 player game. 4 player game, it would be slid out. That's a nice little UI thing. Yeah, I like that. Obviously, if we had any once per year tiles, I've just flipped that over.
Yeah, flip that back. And then the last thing you can do is you can, if you want to, move your marker somewhere else. Now that you know where and how you use resources, you may consider moving this around, and then you just take whatever one you want.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's just changed everything. So
and again, there's no cost to move this
around.
No,
it's just free stuff.
It's free. You move it around, and then you take whatever it is that you want.
And I'm going first. So yeah, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to get 3 orange. That just happens to be all 3 there, and I get some power.
Nice.
Okay.
And did you already take your extra resource as well?
I did.
Okay, so you filled up.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, and then I chose the second one, so I took a permit, rail, and a power.
Nice.
Right.
I'm taking the 4th option here.
Okay. Now, just as an aside for those things, generally, it doesn't really matter what order you take those in, but if for some reason there's not enough, then it's always going to be turn order, I believe, Earl, is how we do it. That determines.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember if we had decided. Yeah. So it's turn order that determines, the order in which you take those resources, those starting budget things. But generally, it's almost never going to matter. But just if it does, that's kind of the decision there.
Now, just keep an eye on the time. We're 4:30 in the UK. We were going to play till about 5 o'clock ish. I can probably go a little bit beyond that. We're not going to get the game finished, but the important thing is that we show off as much as possible. I think definitely play a few more turns, because now that I know what each of the actions do, I've sort of got a bit of an idea.
Sure. Maybe what we can do is we can all take one full just a cycle, maybe like
Yeah.
one cycle, and then we can just show a bit of the scoring so we can
Yes.
see how that kind of works.
Yeah.
And then we'll kind of call
So
it then.
first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my action, which is a once per year action.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I am going to do this
Ooh.
action.
Okay. Yeah.
And it
So
is
he's
going to
already-
be
he's
to
already-
spend all of the stuff that I've just got
Awesome.
to basically move this marker up 1, 2, 3 spaces,
Awesome,
which
yeah.
unlocks an upgrade. And it is going to be that upgrade which allows me to now create hubs, because my objective, I'll let you know, is to have 3 hubs in this area down here. So having them as stations is not good enough.
Yeah.
They need to be
So
hubs.
if you can put a couple of more discs on here, then yeah, you.
Then that's that. So that was that action. Then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do my normal action.
Just before you do that.
Yep.
Please.
And we are going to move
Thank you.
here. And I am going to spend a permit. And I'm going to take another one of these. Now, I'm happy to take advice on which one to take. But I'm thinking I might take one that has a token on it, which can be delivered pretty
For
much
sure.
straight
So
away.
Maybe like a McClellan Heights one. So maybe this one
Yeah.
would be good for you because no one
Yeah.
else is in there. So you're free to put it down and no one else can like eventually steal it from you.
So I can take that
Ooh.
and I can put it wherever I want, really. So I'll put it there.
Yeah, that works there.
And we put one of these on it.
Cool.
So this means that I can burn a worker to get 6 money.
Exactly.
And burning a worker, for those people watching, is a game term. It does not literally mean burning a worker.
It's firing one of your transit employees, I think. is
Right,
what
okay.
Not literally, not literal fire.
Not literally fire.
You could do a stretch goal for like a custom glider, you know.
That's it, yeah.
All right,
Might be
so I'm
shipping
coming to the
issues with
same
that.
spot. Yeah, right. Coming here. I'm gonna trigger my development here, so I'm gonna pay my power,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna pick up that one that I threw down a bit ago. This one here.
So I think that one does not count, but there's another one. Tom can
See, I've
explain.
got this guy
Oh yeah,
here,
you're right.
right?
You are.
Yeah,
You're
so
right.
you
Yes,
just
yes,
have a
yes.
Chippers Row one. So it does mean you can take the Chippers Row tile,
Okay.
and you can put that on your board there. I'm assuming you already paid the power.
And I did, and I get
yeah.
3.
So
you also
that
get 3 coins.
Mhm.
Yeah.
that token, which was a demand token, has been moved from there to Chippers Row. And you could do that because you had a station here,
Exactly.
which is in Chippers Row. Right.
The fact that this happened to be next to his
Didn't matter. Yeah,
Top didn't really matter.
that
Just
could have
again,
been
anywhere.
anywhere. Yeah.
It just so happened that it was also there. But hypothetically, yeah. So he was able to do that, and now at the end of the game, he's at least getting 3 points
Right.
for sort of claiming.
Because
that.
you fulfilled that
And-
demand. Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously, as you can see, you can room up to 4
Mm.
more, to 25. It's not really set collection that you need to get like all different ones or all the same or anything like that. If TK does want to get like, let's say there's another Chippers Row option that ends up in the game, he can get another one. He just has to have a second Chippers Row stop somewhere in Chippers Row so that he can claim another one.
Okay.
That's the only stipulation there.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm gonna skip that and head to the lobby zone. So I'm gonna use my blueprint as opposed to a permit, because I'm gonna take one of these actions here because we're gonna do something we haven't shown. So Tom, I'm gonna lobby for a project.
Okay, so
This is the
Earl's gonna
right hand
take
one, isn't it? Yeah.
this action here.
Mhm.
So he's going to put a number of lobbyists onto one of these cards here, these face-up projects. Now, the way that these projects work is slightly different from the face-down objectives, the agendas, is there's kind of different like buckets of potential points, and then above them, requirements for whatever the buckets are. So Earl, for example, has put 3 here. So what this means is that Earl thinks that if he can do, he thinks he can do the sort of middle tier of whatever this ask is. So this says if he builds 9 of whatever this is, I'll kind of go through that a bit later, but if he sort of does the 9 number, then he gets 15 prestige at the end of the game. Now, if he happens to get the 10 plus, but he doesn't have a 4th lobbyist on this, he's not going to be able to get 22 points. He's got to at some point have another meeple on here in order to get that big amount of points. And then subsequently, if he manages to only get 8, he'll still score the lower requirement.
Right.
So he can get up to that 15 points. And you'll notice that there's sort of like, it's sort of delineated by there's 2s, then 3, then 4. So Earl decided to put 3, but if he wanted, he could only have put 2, and then later on put another one, and then maybe later on put a 4th one, or he can put the 3 that he did, or even
Yeah.
all 4 that he wants to. Just keeping in mind that once these are on this card, they're locked in for the remainder of the game.
Yeah.
So it becomes, pretty expensive to do that. And then the last thing to note is that only one other player in this
Could
game
go here.
get onto there. So
Yeah.
if Paul, you got on here later on, then TK doesn't
Cannot
have
go
access
there.
to get those points.
Yeah. Just going back to what TK did on his last turn, David's pointed out in the chat that instead of removing that token from there, you could have removed this one from there and done it there. And I guess there are certain situations where that might be beneficial, but nobody else can remove this token yet.
Exactly.
Because
Right.
nobody has anything in Knightsbridge. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no competition there. So that's my turn. I think back to you, Paul.
So I did that, and I don't think I'm interested in doing that just yet. Coming round to here, I am going to need some blueprints in order to build some stations. Yeah, so we're going here. Now, blueprints. I don't get any extra free blueprints, and I don't want to take too many and get myself caught out like I did last time. However, no, I think 2's probably enough.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to go there. I spend 2 money, and that is me done.
Okay.
Yep,
Back to
nice and
TK.
simple.
All right, I'm gonna take 2.
Cool. Gonna cost you 4.
Ooh, getting expensive here.
Well, you have
I
the
like
free
it.
of this one, right? So it's doesn't
That's
matter.
you're right. That's true. Not too bad for me. Okay, so I think I want to make sure I get this right. So I think I'm going to spend 5 coins. So I'm going to buy 2 blueprints, and one of those I get for free because I have this action. I'm taking that action.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that is my turn. I feel like I bought too much already.
You already had one.
So I could go to here, and since I get a free permit or power every time I buy them, it seems like the good thing to do, but I don't actually need these permits. Because right now I want the orange cubes, and if I buy the green or the brown, then that's taking up
For sure.
valuable space that is needed for
Okay.
something else.
If you think you want to
Um,
build those 2 hubs in this cycle, then maybe getting those 2 construction is.
Yeah, it's a shame that there's only 2 there, but that's just the way it is. So I'll take those 2.
Cool.
And that's it.
All right, come over here, and I think I'm gonna buy some powered. I'll want 1 or 2. Let's do. Got a lot of money.
Connor popped into the chat from Inside Up Games earlier on and just said that we need to beat Earl, but I mean, if
don't
we
know.
played the game
I
to the
don't
end,
know.
I think we're definitely going to win, but we won't finish it, so we'll never know.
All right, so just buying 1 power for 2 and getting rid of a construction.
Perfect. All right, I think it's back to me here. Okay, that still works out for me. So, using my tried and true here, it's been super helpful. So I will spend 2 coins. Getting 1 back for change here. So I need to take 1 permit, even though it's super cheap, but I get 1 more construction. So I'm going to need it for what I'm going to do next. And that's my turn.
So I think I'm constructing again.
Yeah, you're gonna build.
Yeah.
I think I am. So it's going to cost me the permit, and it's going to cost me the 2 things. I don't have any rails, but I think I can put these 2 onto here
Yeah, you
and
can
make
build those hubs without
and
the
make
rails.
these stations hubs. So I now have 3 hubs in. I'll just reveal that. There you go. I've got 3 hubs within Macmillan Heights and Chippers Row, which means that's 4 points at the end of the game. If I can get 5 and put a lobbyist on it, is that an extra 9 points or 9 points
It's
instead of
just
the 4?
it's a total of 9 points instead
Total of
of the
9.
4.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me done.
Cool. And then you spent these are the blueprints.
Oh, I got to do the blueprints as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No worries. I couldn't remember what you already had on your player board. Awesome. Yeah, nice. That looks good.
Okay. I think back to TK.
All right, coming here. Doing this guy. I'm going to go up 2.
Mhm.
So 2 of these and a power, but then I'll get to flip one of my upgrades.
Oh, and don't forget your construction upgrade, so you don't actually
Oh.
need to pay that
And
second.
you always
Mhm.
spend
You can
one
even
more.
go forward 1, actually, if that's
Yeah, you
something
can
you'd
go one
like.
Yeah, go
Oh.
forward an extra one.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that. Makes sense. Save some actions. I do only have the 1 power. All right. And then I'm going to flip the hub.
Nice. Okay, and then back to Earl.
All right, so I know what I'm going to do. I will head over here. I'm going to take the action to buy rails.
And then construct on your next one. Yeah.
9. So I think... Oh, this... I don't have enough. I don't have enough coins.
Would you like a loan?
Unfortunately, I think I can
How many
only...
coins are
I
you going
can...
to need here? What are you doing?
Yeah, something wild. So I think I'm just going to spend 5 coins. So even I can't do everything I'd like, and I'm the designer. So I will spend 5 coins, and I will buy 6
Quick, change the rules.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where I'd really like TK's tile here. Maybe I'll eventually get there. I'd really like TK's tile here. Maybe I'll eventually get there. I think someone just
Some audio's coming out.
just joined here. Yeah. Someone might have joined by accident there. So I just bought rails, and that's my turn.
Okay. So I'm going round. So that's it. But I'm going to be choosing this action.
Nice. Yep.
So this is the spending 1 power, and I can basically meet the fulfill one of these demands. So this demand here wants to go here. So I just pop it on there, and that's it. That's that action done. I think that's right.
So yeah,
Simple.
you got
Take
your,
that, put it on. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I think I'm going to build 2 of my stations. So let's go. Let's see. Yeah. So let's continue going here. I think I've got enough rails for 2 stations. All right, and it's going to be 1 construction, 1 permit,
2 blueprints.
and my 2 blueprints.
Yep. Nice.
That's it.
So if Earl, you want to do your build, I think that might be then a good time to wrap things up and sort of zoom ahead and show us what will happen later on.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to spend all of these resources. I'm going to build a whopping 4 times here.
4?
I think if I've gotten
Earl's making sure we know that he's one of the designers.
Yeah. How
I'm doing this
so
I can show.
Yeah, it's got the rails.
I'm going to show some fun stuff here.
So it has to come from here because you haven't unlocked this upgrade. Okay.
But something that we haven't seen yet, but we've mentioned before, are connections.
Yeah.
Tom maybe could explain while I build this.
Yeah, so what Earl's doing here is he's connecting through TK's line. Now, whenever he does that, the terminus of his build becomes wherever his line is going to. So, for example, when he got here, he has to leave from there with his own rails. When he gets here, again, leaving with his own rails. Eventually, he's continuing on. So he's not like using Red's line to bypass all the rail spots or anything like that. But he is, connecting through them. Now, when a connection is made, you'll notice on your player board, just below where the resources are, there's a little series of icons there. So that kind of is the connection mechanic. And what that means is that whenever you connect to other players, at the end of your turn, you will get 1 total power cube, regardless of how many times you connected to or who you connected to. Earl, because he's the connector, he gets 1 power cube. So he'll get that. But for everyone who owns these stops that are being connected to, in this case, TK owns 2 of these.
Yep.
He's going to get 1 coin for each of these owned stops.
Right.
From the bank, not from Earl, from the bank. So
Okay.
Red will be able to, in this instance, take 2 coins from the bank, and it gives him a little bit of a bonus. So that's kind of the risk reward or the push pull of connecting. It gets you farther across the board. It gets you a power, but it gives other players, a little bit of money and stuff like that.
And I take it that you can't build a hub on top of somebody else's station?
Yeah, you aren't able to build hubs over top of anyone else's stops.
I figured as much.
Yeah. Cool. So Earl's done a nice little build there. He's showing us what connections is like and things like that. So I think, as you said, Paul, that's probably a good time to just jump to scoring to show kind of what it might look like.
Because we've seen all of the actions. We've seen the flow. There's definitely a lot of planning ahead. Like, oh, I know I'm going to need this, this, and this. And you will spend 1 cycle or maybe even 2 cycles collecting the stuff that you need in order to be able to do it. Possibly even 3 cycles in my case. And then you're playing over 3 years. Now, obviously, we've only started expanding out. At the end of a game, how many stations is a player going to have on the board?
I mean, I would say in terms of the number of total discs that you started with, you're probably placing up to, generally most players will get rid of maybe around this many, something like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe
you can
7 to
certainly,
10.
Yeah, 7 to 10. You can certainly get them all onto the board, but you have to be pretty optimal. You'll notice at the end of the row of discs here, there's like the capacity gets quite a lot more challenging. So, it becomes more difficult towards the end.
Yeah, I noticed that. There's some double spaces with more power required.
Now, having said that, you don't need to build all your stops to win. You can certainly win with having very few things built. If you just are on the right cards, have the right objectives, things like that. So it's kind of just a matter of if you've planned correctly more so than having built, as many discs as possible. Kind of thing.
Okay. So skipping ahead to scoring, obviously we don't have a completed board state here, but we've seen this card. And if the game was to end right now, that card is getting me 4 points. But if I carried on building down here and then managed to get a thing on there, we're looking at 9 points for that card. That's a lot of work to do for 9 points. So what's a good winning score in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think typically if you're, getting close to, say, 55, 60, I think you had a pretty solid game. If you've really played well, you might be reaching, getting close to a 70. We find that the player counts do affect a bit of what like the top end scoring can be. I think with fewer players, it tends to be a little lower scoring just because I think the interaction on the city the lack of interaction perhaps does hurt you in terms of being able to get more points in some interesting way. But yeah, I mean, depending on, how well you play, between, 40 to 70 points is what most players typically fall kind of up.
Okay. So TK, do you want to just give us a minute to let us know what cards you were aiming towards and what your grand master plan was?
Yeah, so this one was building stops in a few areas. I was really aiming for Knightbridge. So I got 5, so I got 4 points on that one.
Nice.
This one was for hubs, which was why I flipped my upgrade here, which I would probably aim for late in the second year, probably more in the third. Yeah.
And again, hubs within Old Cross and Knightsbridge. So for you, Knightsbridge was a strong area.
Yeah, that's why you kind of
both of your cards.
That's pretty good.
Right.
And Earl, what were you going for?
So I have stops within Chippers Row, Knightsbridge, and Old Cross.
Yep.
So I did notice that TK started building up. So I did start to change my plan here. I think eventually I'll build kind of towards the south area. No one's really competing for that. But it's also, you'll notice as I built, we'll kind of jump ahead to the project stuff, but I started building with a different plan in mind.
Right. So so this project that you went on, this is for distance of blocks between your 2 farthest stops, counting orthogonally. So right now, that is, what, 1...
Right now, that's only 4, because we're counting these over here.
1, 2, 3, 4. Right. But you were going to be going as far over here as you can, and then as far over here as you can.
So that looks like what Earl was lining up to do, was trying to get a nice long line across the sort of diagonal of the city away, and then get a lot of points that way.
And these 3 project cards, again, these were picked at random from a deck of 10 or something?
For the suggested setup, there's 3 or 4 cards. Higher player counts would mean all 4 get brought up, but a typical game would be random shuffle selection.
Yeah, but these are the suggested ones for your first game.
Exactly.
So, yeah, cool. Now, in terms of player scaling, the board doesn't change at all because those different boroughs or districts need to be in the game.
The board doesn't change. The size of the board doesn't change.
Yeah.
You'll notice that there are a few things at the top of the board where it tells you different things for different player accounts. So there's like less upgrades and all those kinds of things like that. Less of these that are dealt out at the beginning of a game for the player accounts. And then you'll notice that on the where the resources are, there's kind of a few areas that are darkened.
Yes.
So the ones that are dark, they don't get used for the 2-player version.
Okay. Now, speaking of the 2-player version, we've led nicely into that. When you first pitched this game, you were telling me this yesterday, when you first pitched this game to Inside Up Games, it was a 3 to 5 player game. But the team at Inside Up really wanted you to make it a 2-player game, so you have developed a 2-player mode for it. Just tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, so in the 2-player mode, there is sort of an automa line that will be building as the other players are doing stuff. So essentially, 2 different players are taking their normal turns, building their normal lines, but there's a third sort of dummy line or fake line that also will build its own way across the city in a specific way, and it kind of responds to how the players kind of are taking their action. So essentially how it works is whenever the 2 players in the 2-player game increase their capacity, the automa line will also build at that point. So whenever the 2 players are doing that, the automa line starts to like spit out stations and discs and rails, and starts to take up certain places on the city as well. The automa also has its own action marker. Now it doesn't take actions, but wherever it is on the action loop, if you also come to that space, you have to pay an extra coin to the bank in addition to your normal turn. So it's
and
kind
we
of
know
like an extra
money's
cost.
tight. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that marker will move around throughout the game as well, to sort of make the different action spaces cost a little bit more throughout the game. So that's kind of a bit of how the automa line, the 2-player works. I know there's a lot of questions probably around if there's a solo mode.
Yeah.
Earl and I have been sort of working on that, and I think hopefully there'll be a way to kind of implement something that is similar to what the 2-player version is, but it still needs, quite a lot of play testing and things like that.
Yeah.
But I know that's a very, very desired thing.
It is. And we talked about this offline yesterday, and I said to you at the time, and somebody said this earlier on in the chat, not every game needs a solo mode. There are certain games out there which have had solo modes put onto them, and the solo modes just don't work at all. So I'm a big believer that not every game needs a solo mode. Of course, if you have a solo mode, that's great, because suddenly your target audience is higher. But I would trust you that if you can't get the solo mode to work, just say, look, we tried and we can't. However, you've got a sort of automa for the 2-player mode. So it seems like you might be halfway there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we can figure out a way to, in a solo mode, have 2 automas kind of working somehow without them, stepping on each other's toes, without the single player having to deal with sort of the 2 automas, doing weird stuff, things like that.
Yeah.
I think there's something there, but we'll just have to figure out if it will, work and not be too janky or strange or whatever.
Yeah. So. I think for us, we would love it if the solo mode can still have the same feeling as like the 2-player and up mode, where it's the interaction with the markets, like placing components, like taking space on the board. It's a little bit more difficult. It's not to say that it's impossible, but we for us, we ideally love something that can still do that feeling for one player.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've sort of seen the first bit of a 3-player game today. The player capacity for this game is 5. I can imagine with 5, this board is going to get very tight.
Yeah, it's crazy. It gets really, really crazy, really, really fast, and then it's just a kind of a bit of a race to the end kind of thing to like get any kind of space that you can almost, right? So
not recommended with 5 for your first game, maybe, because you'll probably end up with objectives and then the routes are all blocked.
Probably not. I think
Okay.
4 is maybe the sweet spot in terms of like the most optimal feeling for a first time play, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly it will work fine at 5. It's
Mhm.
just you might
Yeah.
feel a little bit constrained, as you mentioned, with some of your objectives. And if you don't want that feeling for your first time as much, then yeah, maybe it's not quite the player count
Yeah.
for that
Yeah.
play.
Cool. Right. Well, as we said earlier on, this game is launched on Kickstarter when we started this stream. I can't remember if we planned that, but yeah, we went live with this stream at the same time as the Kickstarter launched. And it has funded, but you know, if you're interested in the game, definitely check out the Kickstarter. There is a bonus for day one backers, which is on there, and the Kickstarter campaign is running for how long? Is it 2-3 weeks?
21 days.
21 days, so 3 weeks.
That's 3 weeks.
Yeah, and Inside Up Games have got a proven track record for a few years now. So, as far as those people that are worried about risk with backing Kickstarters, of course, that you always have to accept the disclaimer. But yeah, until April 25th, Connor says. So there we go. We're all done now. This is a sponsored stream. Inside Up have paid me to create this video today, so I can't really give my personal opinions of the game. But TK, I'm not paying you anything to appear today. You can tell us whatever you think about it. But I'm assuming you quite like it because you decided to join us today.
Yeah, no, I love it. Like I said, I played it about 1.5 years ago.
Mhm.
And like core mechanically, it's the same, but like everything feels tighter, more balanced, right? Which comes with development. And so, yeah, I love the progression of the rondel and the actions, and kind of the tension of wanting to jump ahead of somebody to buy something for cheaper, or timing out your actions with your limited resources, and of course the upgrades. It's one of those games that really give you that sense of progression throughout the whole game, which I think
Right.
is important. And of course, I think the theme fits really well with the mechanics. So yeah, it's definitely a solid game.
Yeah, we spoke briefly yesterday, Tom and Earl, about theme and games, and you were saying that the theme came first with this one, and then you designed the mechanics around it. What made you choose building subways as a theme?
Is it you, Tom? Is it me? Who's gonna talk?
I mean, I can start, but I think it's going to be you doing the bulk of the talking. I definitely think that for us, we're from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and our transit system in Toronto it's okay. It's not always great. So I think for us, there's always been a kind of a question of, how could it be improved? What would it look like if it was, a utopian version of our transit system, things like that. And Earl and I are both, very creative people. We've done a lot of like collaborative creative outlets like filmmaking and stuff in the past. So I think the board game fear was just something that we sort of moved into from playing. And then we thought, hey, it would be cool to play, like design a game. And then that theme kind of spoke to us because we both, ride the subway a lot in our day-to-day
Right.
lives and things like that. For Earl, and he can maybe expand on this, Earl has, I think, a little bit of a not-so-secret love of, maps and things like that. Maybe he can expand
All
upon
right, here we go.
that.
I'll just off the frame. I have a mug. That's the NYC subway.
There you
There's a
go.
whole bunch of stuff, I'm sure, over here. So, I mean, I think as you kind of a nice takeaway as you finish the game is when you look at the board, it kind of resembles a subway map.
Yeah.
Kind of like you see in New York, Chicago, Tokyo, London, of course. So it's that feeling of you've accomplished something really cool after you finish playing the game. But you can also see like, oh, I could have done better here, or I wish I had done this, or someone had like taken this spot. So it's a very visual representation of sort of everything you've done in the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even at the end of my first sort of cycle round, I could see, the mistakes that I'd made, because working within those constraints of those 8 cubes is quite hard. Please tell me there's an upgrade that gives you an extra 2 cube capacity. If not, can you add one to the game?
Maybe we'll have to think about adding that for you.
Kickstarter stretch goal, the gaming rules promo, which gives just one cube extra capacity or something like that.
Believe me, though, we have long thought about that kind of upgrade. I think we used to have upgrades like that in earlier versions of the game, and they left, they came back. I mean, the permanent construction one that TK was using was, in a weird way, it's kind of like an extra storage if you think about it that way in some kind of silly way. So there is a bit of that, but certainly I know that's a type of upgrade that you're not the first person who have ever asked.
I thought so. So what I will say about this game, even though I'm not going to give you my opinion on it, is obviously I've covered quite a few games when they are going on to Kickstarter. A lot of them change quite a bit from when it was on Kickstarter to when it actually comes out. And I don't think, I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I don't think you need to change anything in this one. Am I right in thinking that this is 99% done and you're not looking to change anything, but playtesting is still continuing?
Yeah, I think besides perhaps trying to add that solo mode, if we can make that work, if there's something there, and besides balancing maybe some of the developments, like maybe the one Earl used, you really
Maybe.
got a lot out of that. But I think aside from things like that, the game pretty much all the mechanics are fully baked. I don't think there's anything else that we would really need to be changing at this point.
And I think what I'm getting round to saying is that I've played a lot of games that are on Kickstarter. This one feels very developed. And Connor is in the chat and he said, yeah, the game is 99% done when they hit Kickstarter. And I've played a lot of games that feel kind of a bit half-baked. And you know that the development team is then going to continue to develop it. I like playing games that are as close to final as possible. And this one, certainly from a high-level point of view, feels the most polished and developed. And yeah, if you're just going to tweak a couple of extra bits for balance reasons, then yeah, it looks good. Looks good. So if you're interested, check out the Kickstarter. Again, what you're seeing here is the tabletop simulator implementation, which looks very similar to what the physical version is going to be. But yeah, check out the Kickstarter page for what it's actually going to look like. And yeah, I hope this helped you make a decision about whether you back the game or not. I do these videos mainly to help give people an idea of how it plays and to help you make a decision. I do get some people contacting me saying, thank you very much for doing that playthrough, Paul. I was going to back the game and now I'm not going to back the game after watching your video. Now, I never share that with the publisher because that doesn't look good, but that's what I'm here for, is to help you make a decision. And there'll be a lot of people who've watched this and gone, oh, this wasn't on my radar first, now it is and I'll back it. And there might be a couple of people who thought that this was going to be a lightish 30-minute game, which it's not. In terms of complexity, we talked earlier on, just before we started, about the weight rating of this game. And when you said you thought it might be around 3.5, I'm thinking a little lower than that. I'm thinking for me, it's definitely above 3, but maybe not 3.5. Only because after playing it for about an hour and a half, although I don't know everything about the game, I probably knew about 2/3 of it, and it all seemed to fit. And that was not just because your teach was good. The graphic design really helps. The graphic design, you were explaining things, and I was looking at the icons, and I was going, "Yep, that's fine. That all makes sense. It's all very intuitive." In terms of playtime, very good question. What's the average playtime for a 3-player game once people know it?
Typically, we say it's about 30 minutes per player.
Right.
So I think if in a 3-player game, it's roughly 90, and it might go a little higher if there's a lot of analysis paralysis amongst the players. And I think if it's a very competitive game with players who are really knowledgeable at the game, it can almost run longer because everyone is so thinking, right? So it's kind of that. But it's definitely not the shortest game in the world. But around 30 minutes per player is more or less what I think it tends to average out.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Okay. Well, we're all done. Anything you two want to add that we haven't talked about?
No, I think that's it. Solo mode we're thinking about.
Yeah. Is the rest of the day pressing F5 on that Kickstarter page, or are you
staring at it?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, it's funded. It was always going to fund. It's funded, so that's good. The game is actually going to happen. And when's it going to be produced? You two probably know this, and Inside Up Games probably know. When are people going to get it if they back the game now?
I believe that info is on the Kickstarter page.
Yeah.
I would need to double check the dates. I think I've forgotten them already.
March 2024. There you go. So it's not going to be a rush job. It's not going to be out by the end of this year. It's going to be March 2024. So yeah, plenty of time. And I will be speaking to Connor after this playthrough because I will be wanting to cover this game properly once it's finally out in a similar way that I covered Earth. Because, this ticks quite a few of my boxes as well. From a complexity level of the game, I like maps as well. So when I first saw this game and I saw the map and I thought, oh, we're building routes on the map. And yeah, I've got, there's definitely, I like the rondel. I like the actions. I like the fact that a lot of the actions are relatively simple, but you have to sort of combine all of those things together for the big action, which is the building. So yeah, it's all good. Right. Well, thank you very much to you three for joining me. If there's nothing else you want to add, we will wrap the stream up and say goodbye to everybody.
I think
Great,
that's it.
thanks
Thanks
so
so much,
Yeah,
Paul.
we're all good. So yeah, thank you very
Thanks,
much
okay.
for watching. Thank you for everybody for playing, and we will see you all next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.